Hello there. Welcome to the Saroy channel, wherever you are in the world, and so much love to each and every one of you. How are you doing? I do hope you're doing remarkably well. And I hope you're going to go and spoil yourself. Get yourself that effervescent drink or that really warm, comforting drink, because I've got a fabulous story for you tonight. And let me know what you're drinking, because I do love to hear from you and whereabouts in the world you're from. But before we continue with tonight's story, I'd like to remind you that part 1 is not here. You need to look at the description and click the link, because that will be part 1 of the story. This is part 2, and I really recommend you listen to both to get the full impact of the story. So before we get started, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, click the notification bell and the thumbs up, and let's get started with tonight's story. You know nothing about my father, Jack. Nothing. He's a loser. So what if he paid my school and university fees? So what if he sent my mother to rehabilitation and pays for the roof over our heads? Those things are inconsequential. It's only money. It's not inconsequential, Blaze. There are men out there that would not have paid for your mother to get so much help over the years. You have to admit he's been good to the both of you. Financially, maybe. Blaze looks furious. You know nothing about us at all. Nothing, Jack. My dad abandoned me when I was very young. How do you think that made me feel? I haven't seen him for years. And if I did, I'd put a rifle through his head and blow his brains out. I've dreamt about that a lot. At this appalling revelation, I'm shocked. You don't mean that, Blaze, I say. Your father just makes you angry. But your words, they mean nothing. Don't you try me. If I had a chance, I would happily murder him. I decide that Blaze does not mean that. She's just heated about her father. And it's understandable, I suppose. I mean, the man was good to her financially, and still is. But he's never been there for her emotionally. The last time Blaze had seen her dad was when she was just 10 years old. He'd taken her to Disneyland. She hasn't seen him since, so it can't be easy. That night I'm awoken by my alarm clock. It's 1 o'clock in the morning. I know the whole house is fast asleep. I cautiously tiptoe across the landing, which is lit by a night light, so that me and my brothers can easily access the toilets at night. My parents' bedroom is left slightly ajar, but I can hear my father's snores, so I feel reasonably assured that no one is awake. I quietly open Blade's bedroom door. It creaks a little. To my amazement, Blaze is fully dressed, sitting at the edge of her bed, waiting impatiently for me, with a bottle of rum in her hands. Luckily, it looks like she's only taken a couple of swigs of the alcohol. Finally, she says, I thought you weren't coming. I was about to have a smoke. I couldn't wait any longer. Look, my hands are trembling, she says, stretching her arm out in front of me. You don't want to become like your mother, I whisper. Remember, these drugs are recreational. You don't want to become addicted. Shut up, Jack. Stop being so mean. I'm not becoming like my mother, she hisses adamantly. Shh, I whisper. You don't want to wake my family up. Remember, when we get out of here, you must be very, very quiet. The floorboards can sometimes creak, and your combat boots might be noisy, so be careful. If we wake my parents up, there'll be no joint smoked in that forest. You get my drift? Blaze nods. We both cautiously creep across the landing. Blade is carrying a small bag over her shoulders, containing all our quintessential supplies. We climb down the steps quietly. The house is so dead quiet you can hear a pin drop. Finally, we enter the kitchen, that although dark, the outside moonlight has flooded it in a soft luminescence that filters generously through the windows. We're both wearing headlamps on our heads, in order to see our way clearly outside. I cautiously plunge the kitchen key into the lock, and the door opens, making a loud creaking sound. We close it behind us very carefully. I hide the key in one of my mother's flower pots. I have a rug rolled up under my arm, along with my dad's rifle. If he knew I had taken it without his permission, he would flip and have a cadenza, but what he doesn't know won't hurt him. It's better to be safe than sorry, in case there is a bear loitering around. As we leave my parents' kitchen, we are serenaded by the cheerful chorus of crickets and frogs, which gives me a sense that things are going to go very well tonight. When my parents both witnessed those strange light anomalies, they say that there were no animal sounds to be heard anywhere. No crickets, no frogs, no coyotes, nothing. It was deadly silent, apparently. But the moonlight tonight, accompanied by our headlamps, is generously cooperative to us, congenial and almost welcoming, making our trip through the swaying trees easier than we contemplated. I say swaying because there's a gentle breeze blowing. We amble across my father's manicured lawn, dappled with a moist dew. We move towards the rugged fringe of the trees that frame the outer perimeters of the woodgrove. I've been in this woodgrove hundreds and hundreds of times before, but this engaging, warm-hearted, mellow, shaded sanctuary, where I played cowboys and Indians a plethora of times as a young boy with my brother, is barely recognizable in the cruel, dithering shadows of the night, where a murky, indeterminate obscurity has buried the trees and their towering vertical impressions clandestinely under a cloaked, rather tenebrous blanket. The moonlight trickles through the canopy, but even her ethereal, magnanimous light does not accommodate the blacked-out paths that seem so hazy and obscure. It's a little like playing blind man's buff, as we trudge awkwardly through the trees, cracking the leaf litter beneath the soles of our rubber boots, while gusts of invigorating fresh air blow away the cobwebs of our tiredness. Now we're very much wide awake, almost as if we've jumped into an icy cold pool of water. I can sense Blade's reticent, uneasy energy as her lips quiver and tremble, but I know the lure of having a smoke in the woodgrove far outweighs her rising level of angst. I'm also beginning to enjoy the thought of a smoke, but right now there is a menacing, bodeful ambience in the woodgrove that nudges me, whispering into my ears, "Get out! Get out! Get out!" But I willfully ignore those internal warning sirens. I don't like it in here. It's so creepy. Well, where else do you want to go? I'm not complaining. I'm just saying it's spooky. That's because it's dark, I assure my girlfriend. We stumble across leaf litter, twigs, and a plethora of loose stones that have lined the path precariously, and then finally we come to a clearing under a tree, and I roll out the blanket onto the dark earthen soil, flattening down some of the underlying grass. Before long, we're both rolling and smoking joints together. I feel incredibly relaxed and calm, exhilarated even. Blaze fills a couple of plastic cups with rum and coke, which we swig back ebulliently. Even the forest appears less sinister, and I'm getting acquainted with the obscure shapes that no longer appear to intimidate me. Blaze has significantly relaxed. Her trembling has eased, and has been eclipsed by an irrational, giggly laughter. She points at a fern, and we both collapse into laughter, as if it's the funniest thing we've ever seen. It looks like an octopus with lacy tentacles. It's an effeminate squid. At that description, we both begin to crack up laughing again. After a while, the forest changes. I get the overwhelming feeling that something or someone is watching us. It's not a good feeling at all. I glance over at Blaze, who has stopped giggling, and her eyes are firmly pinned on a tree. I think I saw something. I really do. Something staring at us behind that tree over there. She starts to giggle again. We both literally roll over with laughter. We find anything funny. I am literally laughing so much that my stomach is aching with pain, as my muscles are contracting and twinging so much. Then I see something that is clearly not as amused by our shenanigans as we are, and it's watching us. At first, for a moment, I think I'm seeing something that really can't be there. A hallucinatory effect of a very excellent marijuana that has the similar mind-altering qualities of a magic mushroom, so I think. I see a Bigfoot, I giggle. This stuff is really good. This is a good batch you bought. The creature moves towards us. The light of my headlamp cascades over his face. My humour dies as fast as the dying embers on a fire. It's bloody real, I hear Blade say. I know she's right. What I'm seeing is not an optical illusion, nor is it a whimsical light teasing us and playing games with our imagination, nor is it the effect of a marijuana smoke. This creature is as real as you and me. Let's just say the calming, relaxing effects of the marijuana have made me less jumpy and nervous. In normal circumstances, my suppressed adrenaline surge would have bolted through my bloodstream with such a forceful vibration that I would have rocketed out of the forest as fast as a flying saucer. But not tonight. I'm so calm, so serene. When I see this creature, all 9 foot of his imposing form, I'm more bewildered and astonished than afraid. I stare at him with an open jaw, an eye so wide, because I can't believe what I'm beholding. In truth, I'm surprised they don't pop out of my head, like a couple of loose buttons on a teddy bear. The creature is so human-looking, with a rugged, handsome face, like an Indian warrior, as it has an indigenous quality to it. But he has a leathery dark skin, and a heavily wrinkled forehead. But he's built like a powerful army tank, or a polar bear. But his proportions are gargantuan. His arch-shaped head appears to be low-slung on his shoulders, and if there is a neck, I don't actually see one. The creature is incandescent, furious with us. His blazing yellow eyes are filled with indignation. He growls at us angrily, pulling back his lips to expose his human white teeth. And the next thing I know is he's grabbed me by my arm, flung me over his shoulders like a small sack of potatoes, because if at any time I have actually felt small, it was on the back of this creature, whose titanic shoulders could swallow me up for breakfast like a beluga whale. It happened so quickly, I didn't have time to react, or even to fight back. Suddenly the relaxed state of the weed from my system dissipates as fast as the steam from a kettle, almost as if my body has jumped into first gear and remembered my fear response. I'm filled with an overwhelming sense of dread. I perceive the doomful consequences of my predicament. My blood freezes over like an Alaskan river. I want to scream, but nothing dares come out of my mouth. I'm trying to scream, believe me, I really am, but the screams are all internal. They're not articulated audibly by my mouth. My teeth are chattering as if I'm freezing cold, and my entire body wobbles unsteadily. A light switches on in my head like a candle flame in a dark room. This creature is going to kill me. There is no plausible explanation for me being on the back of his shoulders like this, unless he wants to eat me for a light snack. I squeeze my eyes so tight. This can't be happening. This can't be happening. This is a dream. It's a dream. I'm going to wake up in any minute. But my sinking heart and the vacuous deep hollow in my gut warns me that this is no dream. I begin to fight back. I'm oscillating my arms backwards and forwards, but the creature pins me down on his shoulders so hard with one of his hands. I am helpless, powerless under his firm hold. His movements are agile, graceful, very smooth. The next thing I know is the creature has thrown me into the yard, feet away from my front door. He growls at me warningly, and then darts back into the forest, moving like the wind. I can see that Blaze is staggering towards me. She's running behind me, desperate to catch up with me. Finally, we're both standing in front of the kitchen door, trembling like a pair of blancmange jellies. I grab the key from the flower pot, my fingers quivering and shaking as I plunge the key into the lock. We both creep into the house, as quietly as we possibly can. Bloody hell! I thought you were a goner when he threw you on his shoulders like that. He was so angry. I thought he was taking you away to eat you. Tell me about it, I say. I thought I was dead. Is he still out there? Asks Blade, looking at me nervously. All our stuff is in the woods. We can't go back to get it now. I'm too scared. I don't care about our bloody stuff. I'm never going back into that wood grove. That Bigfoot is bloody terrifying. I've never seen anything like him before. We both glance out of the kitchen window, and that's when we see these strange orbs of light, blue and yellow, dancing around the forest, moving between the trees. There is something unsettling, disturbing, ominously evil about them. I don't know what they are, but these are the orbs my parents described to me once. I don't know how we got to sleep that night, after that terrifying Bigfoot encounter, but we did, and when we went down to breakfast the following morning, both my parents were sitting around the table, with stern, sombre expressions on their faces that sent a chill down my spine. I'd never seen my parents look so earnest before. Let's just say, pleased they certainly were not, and anger seemed to hang around the table, like an ominous bad smell I would sooner avoid. "Where are Riley and Wesley?" I ask, as I sit down at the table and knock back a couple of swigs of fresh orange juice. "I got your Uncle Joe to take them to town for ice creams. It's the two of you I want to talk to." My heart is flapping in my chest. Did my parents know what we got up to last night? Please no, I beg inwardly. My father throws a familiar-looking packet of weed at me across the table. It lands on my side plate. Then he places a bottle of rum and coke by my side. "Me and your mother found this lying on the front doorstep," he exclaimed, "along with a bag and a rug. We know this is yours, son. What the hell are you doing with weed and alcohol in our house?" It is in that revelatory moment I realised the Bigfoot had brought all our stuff back from the woodgrove and flung it at the front door, so that my parents now knew I was smoking marijuana, and that they would not take very well. To my amazement, Blaze leaps to my defence, spontaneously interceding. The cat most certainly has not got her tongue this morning. She seems charged with a great deal of indignant spunk. "You shouldn't talk to your son like this. It's none of your business what he gets up to. He's old enough to make his own choices. If he wants to smoke weed, it's his business. And if he wants to drink rum and coke, it's his choice. You mollycoddle your son as if he's a baby." "If I want your opinion about how I raise my son, young lady, I will ask you for it. But I'm not interested in what you think. Frankly, I don't give a damn. You're a bad influence on my son's life. I'll have you know that while he lives under our roof, our rules apply, and we do not accept drugs in this household. Now I would be most obliged, Blaze, if you would leave. You are no longer welcome in our home." "Don't talk to my girlfriend like that, Dad." "I'll talk to her how I like, son. This is my house." My father's account. My son Jack had always been such a promising young man. I was pleased of all his accomplishments. He was a bright, clever boy, and as a father I had always been proud of all my sons. But let's just say I was bothered about Jack's new girl in his life. Blaze was sweet enough, but I smelt trouble brewing on the horizon when she first arrived at our front door, on the first day we met her. I knew she would be a bad influence on Jack's life, and I wasn't wrong. How often do you hear the saying that you become like the company you keep? Sometimes men who've been incarcerated from a spate spent in prison become more qualified for a life of crime after having been in the company of hardened criminals, so to speak. I was worried that some of Blaze's negative influences would rub off on my son, and not in a good way. I had found out from a few searching inquiries, unbeknown to my son Jack, who naturally never volunteered this vital information to me because he didn't want me to know about it. But I discovered that Blaze's mother had been in drug and alcohol rehabilitation centres dozens of times, thanks to her father, who seemed willing to pay for his ex-wife to get the help she needed. But the moment she returned home, she sank back into her old ways, rather like a hamster returning to its exercise wheel for another spin. Blaze was an impressionable young girl who was hanging around a mother who was perpetually struggling with substance abuse. I had my sneaky suspicions that her mother's lifestyle choices had inadvertently rubbed off on her. I mean, how could they not? I'll never forget my wife's reaction when she first met Blaze for the very first time. Jean, my wife, is super conservative. Let's just say when the young girl entered our home with nose rings bobbing out of her nose like rude safety pins, and a collection of ear piercings serenading the corners of her ears in a metallic intrusion, not to mention a piercing in her belly button that she was eager to show off under the skimpy top she wore. If that was not bad enough, her entire body was seemingly plastered and painted up with tattoos. Well, it seemed there was no spare skin left. I'm not adverse to tattoos, but I think the look was little too much for my wife to take on, especially when Blade arrived at our house with bright pink hair. My wife had escaped into her bedroom. I found her sitting on the edge of the bed, blowing into a brown paper bag to calm herself down. "Look what the cat dragged in," she said to me. "I'm unable to cope with that punk rocker downstairs. What's happened to our son?" "Look," I said, sitting down next to my wife on the bed, "I have no idea why our son is attracted to that girl. She's a very idiosyncratic woman,
She's completely out there, and I think she's from a troubled background. He's possibly attracted to her rebellious spirit and unconventional ways. That's what I'm beginning to think.
But why did he dump Tara for this Blaze girl? It's like our son has completely lost his marbles. I don't get it. Tara was so lovely.
Don't get me wrong, sweetheart. I'm sure he regrets breaking up with Tara, although he'll never admit it. I think he went crawling back to her in the end, and she rejected him. Can't say I blame her. I mean, being dumped is not a good feeling, any way you look at it. And Tara, she's a proud young girl. So my guess is she pretty much moved on with her life. Wesley warned Jack, told him he was a complete idiot, but of course Jack refused to listen. Our son can be bull-headed and stubborn. I'm afraid he takes after me in that regard. Not always the best character trait.
So there's no way that Tara can get back together with Jack, you don't think?
Unlikely, sweetheart. Very unlikely, I think.
I'm just worried about this girl. She strikes me as so unstable. I'm quite sure she's taking drugs.
Don't you worry about that, I assure my wife. I'm quite sure Jack will soon learn from his many mistakes. It's the only way that he'll grow up. It's not for us to pass judgment on whom he dates. I imagine there are parents all over the world that may not like their sons or daughter-in-laws. It happens. One day it could potentially happen to us. We have 3 sons. One of our children may marry someone we don't particularly like, but we'll have to be cordial to them, as you must be to this girl Blaze. You mustn't let Jack know how you feel about his girlfriend. It could bring out the rebellious spirit in him, drive him further into her arms, and we don't want him to do that. We need to make her feel welcome here. Pretend that everything is rosy in the garden. I bet that Jack will soon lose interest in her when the shine wears off the shoes. Infatuation lasts only so long, but it has no enduring hold long term.
I hope you're right, Timothy, my wife says to me. I'll do my best to be cordial to the young girl. Believe me, my wife rarely tried to be kind to Blaze. But after she'd spent a weekend with us, and we found a picnic blanket, a bag, rum and coke, not to mention weed on the doorstep, rolled up joints in a plastic bag, we both lost it, and my wife and I pretty much told Blaze to get out of our home and to never come back. At first, things were rather tense in our household. I could tell Jack was infuriated with me and my wife for laying into his girlfriend. And then one day when I asked Jack to help me with some shelves I was putting up for his mother, he confided in me about Tara, and how he was still in love with her, and how he wished he could backpedal the bike to begin dating her all over again.
Dad, I really blew it. I was such an idiot. Wesley was absolutely right. Why does my younger brother have to show me up all the time? Why does he always have to be so right about everything? I threw away the best thing that happened to me, and when I went to Atlanta to see her, she made it clear she'd moved on with her life, wanted nothing more to do with me. Dad, she made me feel as if I'd been nothing to her. It really hurt. Well, son, that's why you have to be careful about the choices you make in life, I tell him. Don't be too quick to run after something that may entice you, but in reality might not have any substance behind it. You have a good thing in Tara there, but you threw it out with the bathwater, and frankly you hurt the poor girl. I'm not surprised she rebuffed you. She must have been terribly hurt. Jack sighs. I've made lots of bosh-ups in my life. He pauses for a moment, and then asks me, Dad, do you believe in Bigfoot? I was startled by his question. As it happens, son, I do, I say. At that, Jack looks at me incredulously, as if he can't believe what I've just said. You never said, Dad. It's not the sort of thing I care to discuss, I say. You know those light anomalies you and Mum saw in the woods? You mean the light orbs? That's right, he says. What about them? What do you want to know, son? Well, what are they, Dad? They're not good, son. That is why me and your mother have always warned you boys never to go into the woodgrove at night. Those things, whatever they are evil, most especially the blue ones. Jack then tells me the story about the dangerous Bigfoot he'd encountered in the woodgrove with Blaze, and the strange light anomalies that they'd seen from the kitchen window.
after he and Blaze had returned to the house.
"It sounds to me, son, as if the Bigfoot was protecting you. He didn't want you anywhere near those light anomalies."
That is when I told my son my own personal story. Timothy's childhood story. I grew up in this farmhouse, where I'm raising my own sons as a young boy. One night when I was about 10 years old, I woke up in the bedroom I shared with my brother Noah, and tiptoed down the sweeping staircase. I'd been eating lots of salted peanuts during the day, and woke up with an insatiable thirst. My throat was dry. I was gagging for some water to drink, but milk would be so much more preferable, and I could hear the milk carton calling my name from the downstairs refrigerator. I padded quietly down the staircase in my dressing gown and slippers. It was early spring, so there was a reasonable chill in the air. I didn't bother to put on the kitchen light, but navigated my way easily to the refrigerator. Our kitchen possessed large windows that overlooked the backyard and the woodgrove. There was a soft moonlight that danced through the kitchen, making it easy to see very clearly. I opened the refrigerator door and grabbed a carton of milk, and I began to drink it straight from the box. My mother would have had a heart attack seeing me drinking milk this way, but what she didn't know would never hurt her. For some reason, as I was drinking the milk, I noticed some strange orbs of light that seemed to be rolling through the woodgrove and gliding through the trees. It was very peculiar. I remember thinking, what the hell is that? I quickly raced up the staircase to drag my unwilling brother Noah out of his bed to observe the strange spectacle that I'd seen. Let's just say he wasn't enamoured to be woken up, and grumbled bitterly under his breath, but nevertheless he reluctantly agreed to follow me down the staircase.
"What's this about, bro? Can't you see I'm tired?"
When I showed him the light anomalies through the window, his sleepiness dissipated, and he pipes,
"What are those strange balls of light doing? Moving between the trees? What are they?"
He looks bewildered about what he's perceiving.
"That's what I'd like to know," I say. "Should we go and check it out?"
I ask him. We both decided that checking the anomaly out was a good idea, and we crept upstairs, taking care not to wake up the parents. I quickly grabbed my sneakers, threw on a pair of jeans and a sweatshirt, as well as a windbreaker. I opened the kitchen door cautiously, and armed with our flashlights, we ventured towards the woodgrove that fringes the borders of our property. We were greeted by a bracing, cool blast of icy air as we ventured out of the house, ambling across the mown yard towards the fringe of trees, which were jiggling against the gentle nudges of the wind. We could see the light orbs moving through the trees. They were yellow and blue ones. They seemed intelligent, and I sensed these lights were watching us, and the feeling was bodeful, airy, unsettling. As we entered the forest, the energy seemed capricious and incredibly hostile. It felt as if we weren't welcome in this place, and I got the overwhelming sense that there were eyes everywhere, boring into us, and those eyes were not kind. It was like chills were running down my spine. I had played in this woodgrove numerous times before during the day, but never had the woodgrove felt so hauntingly airy, so bodeful, so oppressive, so claustrophobic. "I think we should get out of here," I told my brother. "Something doesn't feel right. Something feels terribly wrong. Those orbs, they're intelligent, but it's like they're watching us, and they're horrible. There's something horrible about them." Before my brother had an opportunity to express his own reservations, a blue orb actually moves directly towards us, and then it bounces onto my brother's shoulders. And the next thing I know, my brother begins to convulse, as if his whole body has been charged with an electric current. He's looking at me with eyes filled with terror and an expression of, "What's happening to me? What's happening to me?" I notice smoke rising from my brother's shoulders. It's like he's being electrocuted by this blue orb, and there's that electric sparking sound sizzling through him, while his body jolts and trembles under this powerful surge of energy. I know in that moment that my brother's body is going to be fried and go up in smoke, and there's absolutely nothing I can do about it. I can only watch in helplessness. I am filled with such trepidation, such terror, such absolute devastation. But I know better than to touch my brother. Whatever this blue orb is, it epitomizes all that is evil at its most raw and unrestrained. I want to say something, but my mouth opens and closes on its own. I stare at my brother, see another blue orb moving eagerly towards me, and I hastily zigzag out of its way before it gets me. Then something quite extraordinary happens, something that I cannot explain, as it seems so outer-worldly. A tall, humongous creature arrives so fortuitously on the scene and dives towards my brother, like a desperate mother rescuing her child from drowning in the lake. I see this huge humanoid creature, covered with long flowing dark hair, bending over my brother, grunting something in a strange language that I don't understand, nor can I comprehend. The creature throws my brother down on the ground and begins patting my brother's back frantically, like someone trying to swat the flames from a person who's been caught on fire. I am confounded as the blue orb of light that incapacitated my brother comes bobbing out of his body very reluctantly. But the light is smoking, and there is a stench of burnt rubber that fills the forest. But the orb, which is blistered with what looks like flames of yellow light, literally flies away. My brother's eyes are rolling in the back of his head. He looks disorientated. As I'm watching this, I realize whatever this enormous creature is, he's just saved my brother's life, and possibly mine as well. It was like that blue light that had harmed my brother was forced to leave, and the one that had been intent on harming me had quickly scurried away, like a frightened rabbit darting back to its burrow. The creature is standing beside my brother, patting him all over, and all this while white smoke rises out of his body and dissipates like steam from a kettle until it disappears. The creature stands up and looks at us intently. I'm wondering at this point of time if he's an angel that has been sent by God to rescue us. Our Sunday school teacher had been talking about angels in Sunday school only the previous Sunday, and had told us how God sent them to rescue his children. But I'd never heard of hairy angels before. This creature is absolutely Goliath-like in size. I mean, he's about 9 foot tall, 4 foot wide across the shoulders, with a human-like face. But angels are supposed to be very big. Some are the size of skyscrapers, I'd been told. He must be an angel, I decide. I look directly at the creature and say to him, "Are you an angel sent from God to help us?" I hear the words answered in my head. "Me and my kind are the gatekeepers of the forest." Even though the creature had spoken to me telepathically at 10 years old, I am very accepting of this idiosyncratic line of communication, without being remotely perplexed about it. It seemed as natural to me as breathing, communicating like this. "The blue light! What's the blue light that tried to attack my brother?"
"They're evil. They want to kill, steal, and destroy. Don't go near the blue lights again."
My brother is still so out of sorts that the creature picks him up in his arms, holding him like a baby, and beckons for me to follow him. I don't hesitate. He glides through the forest with me comfortably at his side, and we move towards my house. He lowers my brother on the ground, placing him on the kitchen doorstep in a seated position. Thank you for saving us," I say to the creature.
"May the good Lord be with you," he says in my head. "Stay with your brother until he wakes up."
I watch as the creature glides away into the woods. I'm surprised he doesn't have any wings, but he is huge, with beautiful yellow eyes, and I feel privileged to have met one of God's angels. My brother's just sitting there. His heart is beating, but it's like he's under some kind of trance. I try to talk to him, but he fails to respond, staring vacantly into space. I'm mortified to discover he stinks of rubber and smoke, and there are holes everywhere, which appear to have been singed by fire, and even his shoes look like they've been melted like wax. I'm delighted to say that my brother made a full recovery, but has absolutely no memory of the event. I was to learn later that the idiosyncratic creature I encountered that night is a Bigfoot, and I'm in no doubt he saved our lives. Back to Jack. When I hear my father's extraordinary story, I'm now convinced that the Bigfoot me and Blaze encountered was angry with us only because he wanted to scare us away from those light anomalies. He didn't want us anywhere near them. It now makes perfect sense to me. So sometimes if a Bigfoot is trying to get you out of the woods, it may be because he's trying to save your life. 6 years later, I'm walking down a street in Charleston, Virginia. I'd been on a course there with my company. I'm standing in a coffee shop ordering myself a cup of coffee to go. I glance over at one of the occupied tables. A young woman is typing in her computer, but it's her long Titian colouring that gets my attention. Can it be? No way. But I had to find out, so I grabbed some bags of sugar and deliberately dropped one near her feet. Sorry, I say, reaching down to retrieve it. I find myself looking up into Tara's blue eyes. Oh my God, it was her. We stare at each other for a moment. Jack, she says. Tara, I say. I pull up a chair to sit opposite her. I decide I don't give a damn anymore if she rejects me, but today I'm going to wear my heart on my sleeve. Tara, I say to her, if I have any regrets in my life, it's losing you. You're the only girl I've ever loved. She stares at me. But why did you dump me on that train? Because, Tara, you were the road that was safe, beautiful, reliable, charming. I wanted to try a different journey. I wanted to walk down the rocky, crooked road, badly paved, but it led to a dead end. It was a treacherous road. She looked at me and smiled. Oh, you're mad, Jack. You really are. Why would anybody want to take a road like that? You fancy yourself as some kind of a daredevil, don't you? Something like that, I say. But I'm certainly a fool. A very big fool. I'm delighted to tell you that me and Tara are happily married now, with 2 children. The last I heard about Blaze is that she's been in 3 different rehabilitation centres for substance abuse. So sometimes taking the daredevil choice in life will come back to bite you. So there you are. That's my story. Wow, what an incredible story. Until next time, goodbye and good night.